My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 78 years old, and I've been carrying something inside me for 52 years now. 52 years of silence. 52 years of wondering what if. Today, I want to tell you about my father. Not because he was famous or did something extraordinary, but because what happened between us, or rather, what didn't happen, might save you from the kind of emptiness that sits in your chest like a stone you can never quite remove. My father was a quiet man, a carpenter. He built furniture with his hands, beautiful pieces, chairs and tables that people would drive hours to buy. His workshop was behind our house in a small town in Ohio, and the smell of sawdust and wood varnish, that was the smell of my childhood. But here's what I need you to understand. My father and we never really talked, not about anything that mattered, not once in his entire life. He died when I was 26, heart attack, quick, no warning. One morning he was sanding a rocking chair, and by afternoon he was gone. And I realized, standing at his funeral, that I didn't really know him at all. I knew he took his coffee black. I knew he listened to baseball on the radio every summer evening. I knew he hummed when he worked, always the same tune, something I never asked him about. But I didn't know his fears, his dreams, his regrets. I didn't know what made him laugh as a young man, or what heartbreaks he carried, or why sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window with a look I couldn't read. I was his only daughter. We lived in the same house for 18 years, and I didn't know him. Let me tell you how that happened. Growing up, my father was the kind of man people called strong and silent. Back then, in the 1950s and 60s, that was considered a compliment. Men didn't talk about feelings. They provided, they worked, they fixed things, and that was enough. My mother was the talker in our family. She filled every silence with words, with plans, with questions about school and friends and what I wanted for dinner. And my father, he'd sit there at the table, eating quietly, nodding occasionally, present but somehow not fully there. I learned early not to try too hard with him. When I was about 7, I remember running into his workshop, excited about something, a drawing I'd made at school, a gold star on a spelling test, something that felt enormous to me at that age. He looked up from his work, nodded, said, "That's nice, sweetheart," and went back to sanding. That was it. "That's nice, sweetheart." I wasn't hurt, not really. That was just how he was. I told myself it didn't matter, that actions speak louder than words, that he showed his love in other ways. And maybe that was true. He never missed a school play. He built me a beautiful desk for my room when I turned 12. He worked overtime to help pay for my college. But here's what I've learned in 78 years of living. Actions matter, yes, but words matter too. Connection matters, and you can love someone deeply and still fail them by never letting them see inside your heart. My father failed me that way, and I failed him right back. When I was a teenager, something shifted. The distance between us that had always been there, it hardened into something else. Not anger, not resentment, just acceptance, a kind of giving up. I stopped trying to reach him. I stopped showing him my drawings, my report cards, my poems. I stopped asking him questions about his life, his past, his thoughts. I built my own wall to match his, and we lived behind our separate walls in the same house, polite and distant, and fundamentally alone. My mother noticed. I think it broke her heart, watching her husband and daughter orbit around each other without ever truly meeting. She'd try to bridge the gap sometimes. Margaret, why don't you ask your father about his day? Or, Thomas, Margaret won a writing contest. Isn't that wonderful? And we'd perform the expected responses. That's great, honey. Thanks, Dad. And then the silence would settle back in, thick and familiar. When I left for college at 18, my father drove me to the bus station. We sat in the car for a few minutes before I got out, and I remember thinking, this is it. This is the moment he'll finally say something real. Tell me he's proud of me. Tell me he'll miss me. Tell me anything. He cleared his throat. He said, "You've got everything you need?" I said, "Yes, Dad." He nodded. "Good. Be careful out there." And I got out of the car, grabbed my suitcase, and walked away. I didn't look back. I told myself I didn't need to. I visited home a few times a year after that, Thanksgiving, Christmas, a week in the summer, and each time it was the same. My mother would hug me tight and talk nonstop, and my father would hug me briefly, pat my shoulder, and retreat to his workshop. I met my husband, David, during my senior year. I brought him home that Christmas, nervous about what my father would think. But my father just shook David's hand, said, "Nice to meet you," and that was that. No interrogation, no protective father routine, no real conversation at all. David asked me later, on the drive back to school, "Is your dad okay? He seems, I don't know, far away." I said, "That's just how he is. He's never been a talker." And David, sweet David, he looked at me with concern and said, "That must have been hard, growing up." I shrugged. You can't miss what you never had. I believed that. I really believed that. 2 years later, I got the call. It was a Tuesday afternoon in April 1972. I was 26 years old, living in Michigan with David, working as a school teacher, pregnant with our first child. My mother's voice on the phone was so calm it scared me. "Margaret, honey, you need to come home. Your father, he had a heart attack this morning. He's gone." Gone. Such a small word for such a permanent thing. I drove home that night, 5 hours through rain and darkness, and the whole way I kept thinking about the last time I'd seen him. It had been Christmas, 4 months earlier. We'd exchanged gifts, small talk, polite nothings. I'd hugged him goodbye at the door, and he'd said, "Take care of yourself, sweetheart." Take care of yourself. Those were the last words my father ever said to me. And I couldn't stop thinking, was that enough? Was any of it enough? The funeral was small. My father didn't have many friends, just a few men from the neighborhood, some customers who'd bought his furniture over the years. My mother stood beside the casket, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, like part of her was carved away. Afterwards, I went into his workshop for the first time in years. The smell hit me immediately, sawdust and varnish, and suddenly I was 7 years old again, running in with my gold star spelling test, hoping for something he couldn't give me. The rocking chair he'd been working on was still there, unfinished. I ran my hand over the armrest, feeling the smoothness of the wood, the precision of his work. He was so good at building things. Why couldn't he build a bridge to his own daughter? And then I saw the box. It was sitting on his workbench, a simple wooden box with my name carved on the lid, Margaret, my father's handwriting translated into wood. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were letters, dozens of them, maybe 50 or more, written on lined paper in my father's careful handwriting, letters addressed to me, dated over 20 years. I sat down on the workshop floor and started to read. The first letter was dated 1952, the year I was born.
Dear Margaret, it began. Today I held you for the first time, and I don't have words for what I felt. You were so small, so perfect, and I was terrified. How do I raise a daughter? How do I teach you what you need to know? How do I keep you safe in this world? I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise you, I will try my best. The next letter was from when I was 5. Dear Margaret, you drew a picture for me today, a house with a sun and flowers and our whole family standing outside. I wanted to tell you it was beautiful, that you have talent, that your imagination amazes me. But the words got stuck somewhere between my heart and my mouth, and all I said was, "That's nice. I'm sorry. I don't know why it's so hard for me to say the things I feel." Letter after letter after letter, a private conversation my father was having with me without my knowledge. When I was 12, I finished your desk today. I know you don't understand how much work went into it, how many hours I spent getting every detail right. But that's okay. I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know someday that everything I build with love. When I was 16, you've stopped coming to my workshop. I know I'm not easy to talk to. I know you need more than I know how to give. I watch you sometimes, laughing with your friends, so confident and alive, and I wonder how I raised someone so different from me. I'm proud of you, Margaret. I wish I knew how to tell you. When I was 18, the day I left for college, I sat in the car today and watched you walk away with your suitcase, and I wanted to call out to you, to run after you, to tell you all the things I've never said. But I didn't. I just sat there and watched you go. Why am I like this? Why can't I be the father you deserve? I read every letter. It took hours, sitting on that workshop floor, crying until I had nothing left. And when I finished, I understood something that I've carried with me ever since. My father loved me, deeply, desperately, completely. He just didn't know how to show it. The words were there, inside him, pressing against his chest, trying to get out. But something in him, some fear or wound or limitation, kept them trapped. He wrote what he couldn't say. He poured his heart onto paper because he couldn't pour it into the space between us. And he saved every letter, hoping that someday I would find them and finally understand. But here's what haunts me, what wakes me up at 3 a.m., even now, 52 years later. If I had tried harder, pushed harder, stayed in that workshop a little longer, would he have found a way to speak? If I had asked the right questions, created the right moment, would the dam have broken? If I had been braver, more patient, more persistent, would my father and I have had a real relationship instead of this collection of unsent letters? I'll never know. That's the thing about death. It ends all possibility. There's no more trying, no more hoping for breakthrough moments. There's just silence and letters you never received until it was too late. After I found those letters, something changed in me. I went home to Michigan with a new resolve. I would not repeat my father's mistake. I would not let the people I loved wonder how I felt. My son was born that summer, James, and from his very first day, I talked to him. I told him I loved him out loud, multiple times every day. I told him I was proud of him. I told him when he made me happy, when he surprised me, when he amazed me. I wore my heart on my sleeve, and I didn't care if it seemed excessive or sentimental. When my daughter Emily came along 2 years later, I did the same with her. Words spoken and written and expressed in every possible way. And with David, my husband, I made a decision that shaped our entire 48-year marriage until he passed 3 years ago. I decided that I would never assume he knew how I felt. I would tell him. Every day, in small ways and big ways, I would tell him, "I love you. I'm grateful for you. You make my life better. I see you. I appreciate you. David used to joke that I was the most communicative person he'd ever met, and I'd say, you have no idea what the alternative looks like. I'm 78 years old. Most of my life is behind me now, but I still think about my father almost every day. I still wonder what it cost him all those years of silence. I still wish I could go back and sit with him in his workshop and say, Dad, I know it's hard for you to talk, but I need to hear you, and I'll wait as long as it takes. Maybe it wouldn't have changed anything. Maybe he was too trapped in his own patterns to break free. But at least I would have tried. At least I would have given him the opportunity. If you're listening to this, I want you to think about the people in your life. Not just your romantic partner, though yes, them too. I mean everyone. Your parents, your children, your friends, the people you love and assume you'll have forever. Are there words you're not saying? Feelings you're keeping locked away? Things you assume they already know? Don't assume. Don't wait. Don't tell yourself there's plenty of time. My father had a box full of letters he never sent, a lifetime of love he couldn't express, and I have a hole in my heart that can never be filled because the conversation we needed to have is no longer possible. There's a chair in my living room by the window. It's the rocking chair my father was making when he died. After the funeral, I asked a friend of his to finish it for me. He did, as closely as he could to my father's original design. I sit in that chair every morning with my coffee, and I rock back and forth, and I think about the man who made it, the man who loved me so much he couldn't find the words, the man who wrote me letters for 20 years and hid them in a box, hoping I'd understand someday. I understand now, Dad, 52 years too late, but I understand. And I hope wherever you are, you can finally hear me say, I love you too. I always did. I was just waiting for you to go first. Don't wait, my friends. That's all I'm asking. Don't wait for the other person to be brave. Don't wait for the perfect moment, the right circumstances, the ideal conditions. Say what you feel, today, now, while you still can. Because the box of unsent letters, a lifetime of silence, the endless wondering what if, trust me when I tell you, you don't want to carry that weight. Not for 1 year, not for 52. Love the people in your life out loud, with words, with presence, with intention. That's what my father taught me, not during his life, but through his death. Not with his voice, but through his letters. And I'm telling you now, so maybe, just maybe, you can learn it an easier way. This channel shares real stories from real people. If this resonated with you, please subscribe and share with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have your own story, something you've learned the hard way, something that might help someone else, there's a link in the description. Reach out. Maybe your story is exactly what someone needs to hear.